our neighbors have this living quarters horse trailer, which means that it's a horse trailer in the back, and then in the front it's a living quarters, basically like an RV. And they can't really run their lights, fans, fridge, anything like that for any useful period of time without their generator running because of low battery capacity. So we are going to upgrade the batteries in this trailer with this lithium battery. We're going to add 400 watts of solar to keep it topped off. And then in the event that they need to charge via the generator, we're going to upgrade to a lithium compatible converter because the factory converter on there is not compatible with lithium batteries. So we're going to run you through the parts we're using. We're going to show you the system diagram to show you sort of how this works from the factory and how it's going to work after we're done. And then we're going to show you how to install all of this. Bam.
Let's get started.
For a run through of the parts that we're going to be installing, this is an SOK 314 amp hour lithium battery. Now the two batteries that are currently up there, I'm not really sure exactly what amp hour size they are, but they're pretty standard lead acid batteries that have sort of reached the end of their useful lifespan. So this is going to, I mean, realistically triple, quadruple, quintuple their battery capacity. It's going to be a huge upgrade as far as that goes. This is going to power lights and fans for pretty much an indefinite amount of time.
And this battery is available in our shop at shop.explorist.life.
We're also going to be installing 4 of these 100 watt solar panels, and we've already put the mounting feet on these just off camera off the side, but they just bolt right to the solar panel using the pre-drilled holes.
And these are also available on our shop at shop.explorist.life.
To charge this battery from those solar panels, we're going to be using this solar charge controller. It's a Victron SmartSolar MPPT 130. This is going to take the voltage from the solar panels, which is going to be operating at about 60 volts, and regulate it down to the 14.4-ish volts that it takes to charge this 12-volt battery.
And you can grab this at our shop at shop.explorist.life.
And to connect that solar charge controller to this battery, we are going to be using this wiring harness right here.
And you can get this at our shop at shop.explorist.life, and you can grab it either assembled with the lugs already crimped on, or unassembled where you crimp them on yourself.
And to connect that solar charge controller to the solar panels, we're using this isolator and this wiring harness here that has the roof entry gland and the grommet pre-attached to it.
You can grab these at shop.explorist.life.
And instead of replacing the converter that is pre-installed down in the living quarters section behind that door, it's going to be way easier and more efficient to just install a converter, or a charger in our case, right here. It's going to live right next to the batteries up inside of that box right up there.
And you can get this charger at our shop at shop.explorist.life.
Here is the trailer. Okay, so this is the generator that is mounted on the top back of the trailer. This is the box where the batteries are currently located, and we're going to be utilizing that box to install this new battery here. Solar panels are actually going to be mounted on top of that box, but I've got them over here for the sake of the drawing. Solar right there. And then we have our shore power inlet that's on the other side. So this is for if you do have shore power available at a campground. There's certain fairgrounds for like rodeos and stuff that has shore power available. So that's going to be there. Factory breaker box and converter is located up here in the living quarters behind that front door. Now electrically, here's how all of this is currently wired. So this is pretty close. So both shore and generator are going into a transfer switch, and that transfer switch is simply forwarding whatever power is being given to it on to the breaker box that's down here. Now that breaker box, it is sending one singular circuit, one 120 volt circuit, back up to the battery box up there. You'll see later that there's actually just a 120 volt outlet right up there that is currently being used to recharge the battery for the generator, and we're going to be simply plugging in this charger here into that outlet to recharge the new battery here. The converter that lives in here, it's attached to a breaker, and we're simply going to be turning that off to disable it, because this is taking the place of that converter and is going to power all of the lights, the fans, all that kind of stuff from this new battery. Bless you. Solar, pretty straightforward. That's just going to be wired in through the isolator to the new batteries, and then that's going to keep the new batteries charged from here. The new set of batteries, the Shore, the generator, by the end of this video, all of this stuff is going to be communicating and coordinating its charging efforts and discharging efforts so that we're able to power lights, fans, 12-volt portion of the fridge, all that kind of stuff from this brand new battery. Now, system limitation. We are not going to be able to power the air conditioner or any of the 120-volt outlets from this battery. Where we live here in northwestern Colorado, the temperatures are pretty mild, and so air conditioner usage is really not necessary for the most part. And our neighbor whose trailer this is, he said that he would just rather just run the generator if he needs to run the air conditioner, and that's just sort of what we're doing here. So we're keeping it really, really simple. This should be a half-day install with the way that we have all of this sort of pre-configured. So it should be pretty quick, should be done by lunchtime, I hope. So let's get going.
Okay, so here's what we've got going on here. This is the house battery bank, and it's a pretty simple system. We've got a neutral to chassis ground here, and then we've got a positive going through a big fuse going to the converter in the house, and that is all we have going on here. Then up here we have the starter battery for the generator, and so these are two separate banks. We're going to start by disconnecting all of this, cleaning up all of the connections, and then we'll put the new battery in place and reconnect everything back up. So this particular model of battery comes with some mounting brackets and threaded inserts already in the battery, which is pretty nice. And now that we've got the battery in place, we're just going to clean up these wires a little bit with some sandpaper and alcohol so that we get a good electrical connection on the new battery, and then we'll connect that up. So these are all cleaned up and ready to be reconnected, but before we reconnect those, we're going to add our solar charger and our shore power charger so that we can get everything connected all at one time. So we just cut this piece of plywood that we're going to mount in this box. We're going to mount the charge controller and the solar isolator to this little backer board, and then we'll put the whole backer board into place. Now we're going to connect up our wires. So we're going to put our PV wires from the solar isolator into the positive and negative PV connections on the charge controller. And then we're going to use our pre-assembled kit from shop.explorist.life, and we're going to connect the battery positive and negative to the charge controller and then to the battery. And we're going to double check positive to positive, negative to negative. And then we'll take the battery cables that go into the charge controller and then to the battery, and we're going to go positive to positive and negative to negative again. Okay, and I also forgot to attach the equipment ground, so I need to put the equipment ground from the pre-assembled kit from shop.explorist.life, and that will attach right here and then to the negative battery terminal on the battery. Make sure you're using the 1/4 inch end of the chassis ground, and we'll attach that to the bolt here, and then make sure that your serrated washer your serrated washer goes between the lug and the equipment ground on the side of the charge controller. Now we're going to go ahead and connect up the BlueSmart charger, and this comes already pre-wired with a 120 volt plug, which we're going to plug into this outlet right here. And then on the other end, it comes pre-wired with these alligator clamps, and we're just going to disconnect that here, push this button, disconnect it here. And it also comes with these lugs, so we're going to connect those back. Just like that. We're just going to mount the charger right here. All right, and we just did some wire management, and since we are using our pre-assembled kits from shop.explorist.life, we did have a little bit of extra wire left over, so we've just coiled that up and we're just going to secure it here once we've got everything connected. So let's get it all connected up.
Exactly. Every time you say shop.explorist.life.
The first connection that we're going to add to our battery is going to be from the BlueSmart charger from shop.explorist.life, and that is coming from the generator and shore power. The next connections that we're going to make are going to be from the solar charge controller, and that'll be the battery negative as well as the equipment ground. We're going to add those on. And lastly, we're going to connect the chassis ground that was originally here. And we're going to put that all onto the battery. Somehow. Click. And now for the positives. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to start with the BlueSmart charger from shop.explorist.life. And we're going to connect the positive. Then we are going to connect the positive from our solar charge controller, and this is from the pre-assembled kit from shop.explorist.life. We'll go like that. There we go. And lastly, we are going to connect the original positive wire that is going into the fuse and down into the camper into the converter. And now we're going to plug in the BlueSmart charger to the existing 120 volt outlet.
Boots are just in it.
We are ready to mount our solar panels, so the next step is to use our pre-assembled solar array wiring kit from shop.explorist.life, and we're going to drill a hole into the roof of the camper and drop our wires down, mount our roof entry gland, run our wires to the solar panels, then mount the solar panels down and get all of that connected.
So we got our hole drilled and we got our grommet in place, and now we're going to go ahead and mount the roof entry gland. And since the bottom of this panel right here is sort of exposed, there's no insulation or anything like that, I didn't want a bunch of like screws sticking through, sort of being sharp. So we're going to use these rivets that sort of expand on the inside. So we'll drill a hole, we'll stick this through, and whenever you put it in and squeeze it, then it expands like so, and then gives a really good like holding pattern on the bottom side. Like that. And so you've got a lot of surface area that this is grabbing. And we're going to be attaching the solar panels with these same rivets as well. and then we will put sealant all around the outside of this at the same time we do the solar panels. For mounting the solar panels, like I said earlier, we've already mounted the solar panel mounting feet on those. They came with some hardware, and we just made sure we put some Loctite on these so they would never loosen up. And then for actually securing them down to the roof, we're going to use those same rivets in the screw holes so we don't have our sharp pointies underneath. And making sure that this doesn't leak is super important. And so we got some, it's an adhesive and sealant from Loctite. It's nothing special. And we're gonna put that as a layer underneath here, squish it down, let it set, you know, with the rivets applying pressure. And then when we lay this down on top of it, we'll put another layer on top of those rivet holes so that there's effectively no chance that it's going to leak. So we're just gonna do that times, let's see, 4, 8, 12, 16 times. Okay, so all these solar panels are now secured down to the roof. I haven't put all the sealing on them yet. We'll do that here in a little bit because it's really hot up here. So we're gonna go ahead and wire all these together, and the maximum voltage of the charge controller is 100 volts. If we wired all these in series, that would be more than that. So we're wiring this in a series parallel configuration, which you can find out more about that on our channel, explorist.life. And we're just gonna go ahead and connect these up in series parallel. These two neighboring panels are going to be in series, which means a positive to negative connection here. These PV connectors just push together. And then these two panels here are wired in series, meaning a positive to negative connection, like so. And then we're going to take our 2-to-1 PV connectors,
Which you can get at shop.explorist.life.
and we're going to take the positive wire from these two panels and the positive wire from these two panels, and that's going to go into this 2-to-1 connector here, like so. And then for the other ones, negative wire for these two, and then negative wire for these two, right here and here, and then connect up into the PV 2-to-1 connector right here. And we'll go ahead and overlay a diagram of what this looks like, because it's kind of confusing, I know. And so maybe it's a little more clarity on how this is all connected. And then we'll grab our wires that are going into the inside of the storage compartment. And then they sort of go in there only one way. Negative wires to the black cable here. Positive wires to the red wire here. And then we'll just put this down here just for now. I'll tidy all this up here in a little bit after we sort of make sure it all works. Feed it through into the inside. And shy of tidying that up and sealing all these holes, that is pretty much that up on the roof. So let's open this back up and see if it all works.
And before we connect anything up, I'm going to make sure that the solar isolator switch is off. Now that we've run all of the solar wires down through the roof of this storage enclosure, we're just going to connect them up to the isolator with our PV connectors. So positive to positive, just clicks in, and negative to negative. Okay. Now we are ready to turn the system on. We've checked all of our negatives are going to negatives, positives to positives, double checked everything. So the last step is to turn the battery on with this SOK battery. We're going to just press this button, press and hold until it turns on. So if you hold it for too long, it turns itself back off.
Okay, I'm sure it's in the instruction manual.
Yeah.
We'll look in the instruction manual and put on the screen
Yeah.
how long to hold this button for. But
And-
ultimately, read your instruction manual.
Yeah. And now the light is blinking on run. You'll just have to trust me because it's really bright and you can't really see.
So the next steps is we're going to go ahead and get our solar charge controller programmed, as well as the BlueSmart charger for generator and shore charging. We're going to get those both programmed for the charging parameters of that SOK battery. Okay, so we already programmed these. I did it off camera because ultimately it's just a matter of going through the app and changing some settings, and I'll leave the programming guidebook down in the video description below so you can check that out. I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of numbers because you're pretty much just looking at the guide, taking those numbers, putting them into the app. So we have the SmartSolar charge controller here, and it is currently programmed to the parameters that SOK wants for these batteries, and I will turn it on. So it's started booting up at the moment, and yeah, so charging at 75 watts at the moment. I feel like literally every video we do on this channel, as soon as I'm ready to show you guys how good the solar works, Mother Nature's not cooperative. But anyway, it's working. Our voltage is appropriate for what it should be. Yep, that's true. And then, yeah, so ultimately, it's also, the sun is also that way and our thing is tilted that way, so that's also not really ideal for solar. So ultimately, this is working. Pretty happy with how that's going. The BlueSmart charger that's mounted down here, it is currently also in bulk charge, charging at a rate of 25 amps. And I have already plugged into shore power, and that's why this is working. So this is going to be charging the batteries anytime that this outlet here is on, which is only when the generator is running or when we're connected to shore power, which we are right now. So as soon as I disconnect that, pretending like we're not connected to shore power, then the current from that goes away, and then that will stop charging. So shore power comes back on, and we start charging again. The last thing that we want to check is the SOK battery app, because you guys noticed that we didn't do a shunt in this system like we typically do, because this battery has built-in Bluetooth monitoring, and where I think that a Victron shunt in this system is still a nice thing so that all three of these can coordinate and communicate. The goal here was as easy as possible, and so we did not include a shunt for that reason. The SOK internal battery monitor, though, this is my first time logging into it, to be totally honest, and it seems to give us everything that we need. It says we're currently charging at a rate of 41 amps, so that's a combined effort between solar and shore charging, so that's cool to see that. Our state of charge down there is at 55%, and our battery voltage is at 13 and almost 13.5%. So that's pretty straightforward there. Now the gauge that's inside the camper, it's sort of set up for lead acid, and so it's going to sort of always read full for the most part, but realistically 314 amp hours with all 314 usable versus the 200 and probably 200 amp hours of those other batteries that we pulled out of here with only realistically 50% usable. Man, this is just a massive increase. Now another thing I wanted to note about this particular system is we didn't do alternator charging. We didn't do like a DC to DC charger for charging from the vehicle alternator. Now there's a chance that whatever is connected here, on downstream, might get a little bit of alternator charging from the tow vehicle of this trailer, but realistically those solar panels, they're going to charge as this system is cruising down the road at a faster rate than what the 7-pin connector can charge. So in my eyes, that's not really a consideration here. Just this trailer's probably not going to be driven too much, after dark. So, realistically, that's our alternator charging, cruising down the road in a roundabout sort of way. So I think that's pretty much all that's going on here. We're not going to troubleshoot it right now, but the generator's not starting. I think it's probably because this negative wire is not connected, but we'll do that later. That's kind of outside of the scope of this video, but we're going to go inside and make sure all the lights are working and everything is working as expected inside. Okay, so inside of the camper portion of this trailer, we've got our lights up here and light switch over there. Can't really see it, you have to trust me. And yeah, works well, just the same as it did before, which is a good sign, but it's just going to last a whole lot longer this time around. So with 400 watts of solar charging up there and 314 amp hours of battery bank capacity, like realistically, these lights would sort of last indefinitely. What else? What else is DC powered? This is actually the first day I've ever been in this trailer, so really not familiar with the whole area. There's a fan back here, so turn it on. It's a DC powered device, so that works just as expected. Put some bugs in there. Lights up here work good. Water pump works probably. There's probably a switch for the water pump. I don't know where it is. And yeah, I think that's pretty much that. I think that kind of sums up the fact that it works pretty well. What I was talking about earlier with the inside monitor is the battery condition here showing full. And since this is probably set up to a lead acid voltage curve, this is realistically always going to show good from here on out for the most part. So that's not as accurate as we would like, but you can always use that app to check on the phone to Bluetooth up to that battery and see what the battery state of charge is if you want. So that's sort of the rundown of what we've got going on inside, and yeah, everything is working just as expected, which is a positive sign. So that wraps up this project. We've got 400 watts of solar up top and generator and shore power charging all through a brand new lithium battery bank. Now, shop.explorist.life, we have this particular system, the solar panels with the pre-assembled wiring harnesses all the way to the battery. That's kind of a new thing that we're doing on the shop.explorist.life, and we're calling that the
400 watt solar charging starter kit.
We just came up with the name 30 seconds ago. So that's what we're calling it. It's available on our store at this point. I will put the links to that. Grace will put the links to that and the battery and the BlueSmart solar charge, or the BlueSmart charger for generator and shore down in the video description below, as well as the link to the programming guide. So anything else to say about this? This was a half-day install.
This was a really cool install. Yeah, just a really super simple way to get them some extra power and get some solar charging up on their horse trailer.
They're headed to a big rodeo at the end of this month, and so it's going to be cool to see them, take off with this and see how it works, and they'll have all the lights and fan power that they can possibly handle. Anything else?
No.
Cool. Well, thanks for watching, tuning in. We'll see you next time. Now we're going to replace it with it's the same thing, replace and swap. You are distracting, Lily. Come here. Do you want to be in the video?
Just plop her right here. Also say that it's a living quarters trailer, because that makes more sense. I'm just gonna hold her.
Okay. He's like, let me
unhand
me, woman. It's basically a wild cat. Okay.